Everyone thinks financial bubbles started with the internet, or with the housing market, or with cryptocurrency. But what if I told you that one of the biggest, wildest, and most destructive bubbles in human history wasn't about technology, wasn't about banks, and wasn't even about money. It was about railroads, train tracks, iron lines stretching across Britain in the 1840s. And for a moment, a brief, shining, delusional moment, investors believed these tracks were the future, the guaranteed path to riches, and the single greatest investment mankind had ever discovered. But then, the entire illusion evaporated. Fortunes vanished. Families were ruined, and Britain's booming economy was thrown into chaos. Today, we investigate the British railway mania, how a transportation revolution turned into a financial catastrophe, and how the exact same pattern repeats today, again and again. This is Shadows of History, where the past doesn't just tell stories, it sends warnings. To understand why millions of people bet their savings on railways, we need to go back to Britain in the early 1800s, the world's first industrial superpower. Factories roared. Cities grew. Coal fueled everything. But there was a problem. Transportation. Moving goods by horse and wagon was slow, dangerous, and expensive. Rivers were useful, but only where they existed. And canals, they were helpful, but limited. Britain needed something faster, something stronger, something mechanical. And that something arrived in 1825, when George Stephenson unveiled the world's first successful railway, the Stockton and Darlington line. Crowds watched in awe as a steam-powered locomotive pulled coal. And then passengers, faster than any horse on earth. It was the birth of a miracle. And miracles have a way of turning into obsessions. The first railways weren't about profit, they were about logistics. But then came 1830. The Liverpool and Manchester Railway, the first to use modern locomotives for passengers and cargo. When it opened, it didn't just succeed, it exploded with popularity. People lined up for miles just to ride this strange new machine. Speed was no longer 15 kilometers per hour, it was 40. Travel that once took a day, now took an hour. Investors noticed. Newspapers praised. Innovators dreamed. And Britain asked a dangerous question. If one railway can be profitable, why not 50? Why not 100? Why not everywhere? This wasn't just transportation anymore. This was the future, and people wanted a piece of it. By the early 1840s, interest rates in Britain were low. Money was cheap. Savings were rising. Combine that with the world's first massive middle class, clerks, shopkeepers, small business owners, and you have the ingredients for a financial wildfire. Railway companies began popping up like mushrooms after rain. Every village wanted a station. Every city wanted to be connected. Every newspaper screamed, "Railways are the future. Invest now." But here's the twist. Most of these new railways were not real businesses. They were dreams, sketches, lines drawn on a map and sold as guaranteed fortunes. Shares in these proposed railway lines were sold like candy. People mortgaged homes, pawned jewelry, emptied savings, all to buy railway stock. And the government? They encouraged it. Parliament approved line after line, bill after bill, with almost no oversight. It was a perfect storm. New technology, media, hype, greedy financiers, zero regulation, public excitement, cheap credit, and a booming economy. And then it reached its peak. The collapse didn't happen in a single day. It happened in a slow, horrifying unraveling. As new railways were approved, costs exploded. The price of iron soared. Landowners demanded huge payments for track rights. Engineers were overworked and overstretched. Railway companies needed more money, so they issued more shares, and more, and more, until investors suddenly realized something. Most of these railways would never make a profit. Some would never even be built. In 1845, interest rates began to rise. Hoosed a little. But that little was enough. People tried to sell their shares, but there were no buyers. Prices fell. then crashed. By 1846, the mania was dead. Railway shares that once cost £100 fell to 10. Some fell to £1. Many became worthless. Middle-class families lost everything. Banks collapsed. Construction stopped, and the dream of a railway-covered Britain turned into a nightmare. The financial devastation was brutal. Thousands of families were ruined. Businesses failed. Land values collapsed. The government was blamed for approving too many fantasy railways. And the workers, the navvies, the engineers, the builders, found themselves jobless overnight. The Depression of 1847 hit hard. Factories closed. Food prices spiked. Unemployment soared. Railway mania had promised a new age of prosperity. Instead, it plunged Britain into economic darkness. After the collapse, Parliament tried to regulate railways. Too late. They stopped approving new projects. They enforced stricter capital requirements. But here's the irony. These rules didn't protect investors. They protected the old, established rail companies, the ones with money and connections. Smaller railways, ebb and good ones, died because the rules strangled them. Larger railways became monopolies. Prices went up, innovation slowed. The fixes failed because they came after the bubble and were aimed at the wrong problems. It's a pattern we still see today. Railway mania didn't end with the 1840s. It simply changed shape. You can see the exact same pattern in the dot-com bubble, the housing bubble of 2008, the crypto explosions, the EV startup hype, the meme stock rebellion, the AI gold rush, and even the current startup valuations. In every case, the pattern is identical. A new technology changes everything. Early successes create hype. Media amplifies the excitement. Investors fear missing out. Cheap credit floods the market. Speculation replaces reality. Growth becomes unsustainable. The bubble pops. Authorities react too late. Ordinary people pay the price. The British Railway Mania, ISNT, just a story from 1845. It's the blueprint for modern bubbles. So what can we learn from this? First, bubbles form not because people are greedy, but because people want to believe. Railways were real, useful, revolutionary, but expectations became fantasy. Second, regulation after the crash is always ineffective. The time to act is before the bubble gets out of control, not after it bursts. And third, the greatest risk isn't losing money. It's assuming this time is different, because history shows it never is. So the question today isn't whether another bubble will form. It's already forming somewhere right now. Maybe in AI, maybe in biotech, maybe in crypto again, maybe in something nobody sees yet. What matters is whether we learn from the illusions of the past or get trapped in the next expensive dream. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of history's strangest financial obsessions, subscribe to Shadows of History, because the best way to understand the future is to uncover the patterns hidden in the past. Like the video if you learned something new. Share it with someone who loves economic mysteries, and tell us in the comments, which bubble should we investigate next? This is Shadows of History, and history always leaves a shadow.